the Sustainability Management Master's Program, you're answering one simple question. Do you care about your future generation? If you care about your kids, their grandkids, then you care about sustainability. And a sustainability manager is someone who has the tools to make people understand how they can contribute towards developing a sustainable world. We have both part-time and full-time students. Our curriculum is 30 hours. Instead of thesis, we have a research project course and a seminar course which provides them with the kind of research background they will need to be successful in their job. But at the same time, sustainability is not always everything about environment. It also relates to the business. They will take a sustainable business strategies course. They will take a project management course. Most of these courses are going to be taught by industry people, the people who are doing sustainability on a daily basis as a part of their job. Any organization that has a large number of employees and has a physical infrastructure, they will have to have a sustainability office. If you have the passion to develop and maintain a sustainable world, come to us and we will help you shape your passion into a career which will create an impact.
Thank you, Dibs. It's a real pleasure to be here. I was here 2 years ago, and it was really nice to be invited back. So thank you so much. Yeah, I just joined Entrust to build their corporate program. I tend to get brought into companies to build programs around this space, which is always fun. Entrust is a private company. In case anybody doesn't know, we operate globally, and we're leaders in identity security. We have like manufacturing side and also a software side. So it's really an interesting mix for what I'm doing. But what I'm going to talk today, again, as Dibs mentioned, it's really like what's been happening. We've had, a long run of standard development and then, policies coming in place and regulations. And then in the last 18 months, we've seen a lot of change. What does that mean? And what are companies doing about it? So with that started, I am going to focus primarily on the climate issue today. If we broadened it out, it would take way longer than 45 minutes. So we had a good run. This is what the IPC put this calendar out a couple of years ago, and I think they've just updated it. But really, it looks like where did ESG disclosures start, and where are they now? So they really started back in 1996 with the ISO 14001, which still exists today. It's the international standard on environmental health and safety. And then it moved to GRI, the Global Reporting Index, came out and said, we're going to create this big kind of standard structure and how companies should be reporting. And it wasn't ESG back then. It was just like responsible issues, social responsible issues. And then we see this flood of new standards coming in. And I started work in this space early on. Let's just say early on. I've got white hair. And I would see all of these reporting platforms and standards coming in that are always asking different questions. Some might be similar, but they're different. And I probably spent 50% of my time just reporting. And not doing anything, not moving anything forward. So we saw this convergence of things happening, of standards getting integrated, platforms integrating with standards better. So the sustainability professional could spend less time reporting and more time actually doing stuff. And then as we see these standards coming through, we start seeing policies hitting and regulations hitting. And that's like, more recent years. We had the SEC's climate disclosure rule. We had the European rules, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive. We saw these big ISSB, the International Sustainability Standard Board frameworks around reporting, like financial, like reporting your climate disclosures like you would your financial disclosures. And we're going to talk about this stuff. And then 26 happened. And Trump administration takes 2 came in. They terminated the SEC climate rules, so we don't have to worry about that anymore. The EU Omnibus 1, they decided that they wanted to simplify the EU reporting rules around corporate sustainability due diligence directive and the reporting directive. We saw a 90% reduction in scope from the CSRD and a 70% reduction of companies in scope in the CSDDD. CSDDD also removed climate transition plans and delayed reportings. Then we saw the USA withdraw from the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change and the International Governmental Panel on Climate Change. The California Senate Bill 261, which is that climate-related risk disclosure that aligns with the Task Force for Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, has been stayed. We were supposed to report January 1. We're still waiting to find out if we have to report. The Ninth Circuit Court is deliberating, and someday they'll let us know what we have to do. The EPA just repealed the endangerment finding that defined greenhouse gas emissions as a threat to public health and welfare, which means the EPA cannot regulate against greenhouse gas emissions. Companies have scrubbed acronyms from their website. You're seeing a lot less ESG language. You're seeing basically no DEI language. And green hushing took center stage in many corporations. Doesn't mean they're not doing anything. It means they're keeping things quiet. Headlines of last year weren't fun to read. The rise and fall of ESG, big business is abandoning its climate goals. Is ESG dead? I saw these every day. It was depressing to open up my LinkedIn feed or even the local Reuters or whatever. It was always showing up. But we have to ask ourselves, are these headlines accurate? Or are they just headlines? Are they misinformation designed to shift the conversation and polarize society groups? On the surface, everything does look bleak, but if you look beyond the headlines, the work is still happening. We can't ignore climate change. Gallagher Re puts out a natural catastrophe and climate risk report every year. They put out their latest one last month. They estimate that total global economic costs from natural disasters that are climate induced, not like earthquakes and stuff, were $277 billion last year. Insurance only covered 45% of that. 65% of the costs of those damages were covered by private companies or individuals. And that was a light year. If you look at the little graphs on the bottom left, it shows last year against the 10-year average, the 10 previous year average. We had 25% less economic loss in 2025 than we did in the previous years. So still a lot of money. If we look at the map here, that shows where these events happen. This map does include all natural catastrophes, so it does include earthquakes as well, which is not climate driven. But if we look at that, it shows you that China's flooding season cost $23 billion. Europe's drought and severe storms cost nearly $20 billion. And in the USA, well, we had 23 events that came out at $1 billion or higher. We can see in the graph that we are trending in a very uncomfortable direction. Severe storms accounted for 21 of the 23 events. It was the third highest year of billion-dollar disasters since 1980. We got LA wildfires. That cost over $60 billion. It was the costliest wildfire on record. As the frequency of billion-dollar disasters rises, the average length of time between them has fallen from 82 days from the 1980s to last year, just 10 days in between a billion-dollar disaster. These back-to-back disasters, like the wave of the billion-dollar storms we saw in the spring of 2025 in the US, strain resources available to communities to respond, to recover, and to prepare for future risk. Climate change is most certainly a business risk because we operate in these countries. But the global leaders agree. And I always like to look at the World Economic Forum's Global Risk Report. They put that out, I think, January of every year. And what they do is they submit a global risk perception survey looking for insights on the evolving global risk landscape from over 1,300 leaders across the globe. These are leaders in academia, leaders in business, government, international organizations, and civil society. And they define global risk as a possibility of the occurrence of an event or a condition that, if it occurs, it would negatively impact a significant portion of global GDP, population, or natural resource. So looking at this every year, they say, okay, what are the short-term risks that you expect? What are the long-term risks? And that's that chart on the left-hand side. We can see extreme weather events is the fourth um, the biggest risk in the short term in the next 2 years. We look at the long term, out of the 10, five of them, half of them are environmental risks. Extreme weather events, biodiversity loss, and ecosystem collapse, and critical changes to Earth's ecosystems have been the top three long-term risks in this study for the last 5 years. It's a thing, right? Our leaders around the globe see that. The map on the right shows the interconnection. How are all these risks interconnected? And I want to take a closer look at this because it's really fascinating. Everything is connected to everything else. This visualization maps how global risks, those economic risks, the environmental risks, the geopolitical risks, the societal risks, and the technological threats relate and influence another. The larger the circle or the node is the bigger the risk. The thicker the line, the more influence the risk has on another risk. So this visualization identifies central interconnected risks that act as catalysts for other crises. We can see inequality. That is the most interconnected global risk for the second year running. It is connected to nearly every single other risk on this sheet. Let's see what else we've got. Economic downturn, another giant one, again, connected to every single other risk on the street. And in parallel, misinformation and disinformation is also a pretty large risk out there. If we think back to the slide I showed a few minutes ago on the headlines, were those headlines misinformation and disinformation? Are we using our media as a way to shape a conversation? I don't have an answer for that, but it's fascinating, and the global leaders imply in this the report that we are. So this map really does help us understand the complexity of our global landscape around risks. Now, climate risks we know are important to. We've seen that they're important to the global leaders, and they're operational risks, they're financial risks. Managing a sustainability program is not an ideology. It's about understanding whether your business can operate and grow under real world risk conditions. If you treat sustainability as a side dish, get ready for the risk to accumulate quietly until business disruption and surprises become unavoidable. The real question for business leaders is not whether sustainability matters, it's when it's going to impact your business. If you look at the S&P Global graphs on the right, the top one shows the cost that can be incurred from annually by climate hazards by sector. Utilities is the top sector. It is the most financially impacted industry out there. Utilities provide us with water, with energy, with natural gas for home heating. They're not just going to absorb these costs, they're going to pass them on to us. They're going to pass them on to the customers. So climate risk costs us money. If we look at the bottom graph, it is they say large companies face $1.2 trillion in annual physical risk. So this is which risk is the most expensive? Well, it's extreme heat. It's nearly $7 billion a year that we pay in costs because of extreme heat. These risks are real, and investors want to know if companies are looking at them. And so 59%, nearly 60% of all global stock exchanges have published ESG reporting guidance for their listed companies. 37 jurisdictions have adopted the process of finalizing step towards introducing ISSB standards into their regulatory frameworks, providing transparency into capital markets. And that's what you're looking at on the image on the right-hand side. Now, ISSB stands for the International Sustainability Standards Boards. They're reporting standards that are detailed enough to fulfill investors' needs for consistent, comparable, and reliable information about the risks and opportunities that companies face from sustainability issues that impact their business. Right now, they've got two standards, S1 and S2. S1 is general standards, S2 is climate standards. I think they've got like 10 other standards that are on their hit list to do. The next one is ecosystems and biodiversity. So when you look at the top graphic here, that shows the different countries that are looking to adopt the standards and what level of adoption they're in and when they expect to be fully adopted. So the lighter color is that it's under consideration during that year. That middle green color shows that it's in effect. and that companies need to start preparing to report. And then first reporting is that really dark green. So if you see a really dark green, like we look Zimbabwe on the very far right has a dark green in 2027. So they are going to be required. All listed companies in the Zimbabwe stock exchange needs to submit a ISSB report in 2027. The map below shows the level of adoption of these standards that each is considering. Some of these countries are not adopting the full standards, but they're adopting pieces of it. So you can kind of see on the bottom whether they are looking at full adoption or partial adoption. But by embedding climate disclosures into mainstream financial reporting, investors are signaling a long-term expectation that climate risk and opportunity are core considerations for companies' financial risks. Banks are in on it too. There's a new study in the Journal of Environmental Economics and Management that analyzed nearly 90,000 syndicated bank loans that's issued to about 10,000 firms across 77 countries. They're showing that if a business has an operation in a country that is more exposed to climate risk, even if that company has not experienced any climate disaster or had to pay for a climate disaster, it is still going to, and it needs a loan, it's still going to see a larger interest rate on that loan. They're looking at interest rates rising by about 0.4% on average. This is another reason, we've got investors that are interested in this, in climate risk and making sure companies are looking at this. But if you're de-scoped from like the European Union regulations, you can't step back from climate risk reporting because it's extremely important for the financial sectors. And for banks, this is a calculation risk. So let's pause here a second. We kind of started off this presentation talking about the long history of sustainability reporting and that corporations were facing, how reporting converged to be more streamlined and meaningful. Then came global regulations that were poised to impact nearly every single company around the world in one way or another. Then the politicians in Europe and in USA hit the brakes and either walked back those climate reporting regulations or they killed them. But we have learned that climate risk is a big thing. Like we know that banks are interested and we know that investors are interested, the financial sector is interested. So we really have to start thinking about whether or not the softening of regulations by elected officials is more a reflection on election timelines than and on short-term perspectives than rather on long-term business importance. So I'll just leave that there. But there is still regulations in the United States. I couldn't believe this. Last month, the U.S. Prove It Act was adopted. That requires the Secretary of Energy to conduct and report greenhouse gas emissions for those energy-intensive industries, the steel, aluminum, fertilizer, glass, and other products. So we can show that our products are less energy-intensive or less greenhouse gas intensive than products in China or India or Russia. Why are we doing this? Well, because we operate in a global marketplace. We've got the European carbon border adjustment mechanism that taxes these products that come into Europe if they are highly carbon intensive. And we've got customers around the globe that are prioritizing working with companies that have a lower emission product, so they can help them meet their targets. So we're still seeing federal regulations, and states are still at it too. We've got 24 states plus the District of Columbia has adopted greenhouse gas emission reduction targets, and we have 67 enacted policies around climate in our 50 states. Now, these policies are not just applied to companies. They could be like, we have a policy to reduce our state's emissions, or adopt certain things within the confines of the government, of the state government. But we still have them in the United States. So understanding all this, why are companies still committed to this? Well, the monumental legal mandates that we've seen arise are either gone or soft, and global regulations still exist in some form. and companies operate on a global scale. For all companies, expectations by banks, investors, and business still remain. They still expect companies to look at climate risk and address climate risk and report on climate risk. And so while you can be exempt from these regulations, you can't be exempt from social and environmental risks. So while companies may not be singing from the rooftops anymore and putting out large, grandiose statements about what they're doing, they're still doing the work. But it's likely that work has shifted somewhat as well, and shifted in a necessary way. Sustainability professionals now more than ever must tie their work into business value. So instead of reporting to all these different platforms or having really broad topics that we are tracking in our organization, we're saying what's important to our company and let's focus on that. So let's dive a little bit deeper into that. What are companies doing? You want your company to be trustworthy. So when you think about if you're going to build this program for your company, you want to build a program that's trustworthy. So you must do the work to build the trust. Trust leads to deeper relationships with all stakeholders, internal and external. The immediate need is to comply with those that immediate need to comply with those large regulations, that's ended. So what we can do now is we can stop, we can take a breath, and we can really listen to our stakeholders, can really listen to what's important to them, what is driving their decision making, what do they need, what kind of information do they need, and we can build a robust program founded on accountability and focused on those issues that are important or material to your business. Find out what risks your organization exposed to, and then guide your company in a way to minimize those risks. And do this over and over and over again. This isn't a linear path. This is a circular path. We're constantly learning. We're constantly going back to a previous step and making it better and making it stronger. And so every year it is an evolving process, and it's exciting. Let's take a look at what some of these actions look like in more detail. The first one was this, apply systems thinking across your value chain. Well, why should you do this? Well, you do that. This is a bit like that interconnection map that I showed you earlier. It's really looking at things at a broad scale. It's expanding that perspective, and by looking and assessing your business through a systems thinking lens, you'll bring more stability to your business. So you're going to look at upstream at your supply chain, at your value chain. You're going to look downstream to where your customers are using and how they're using your product, and you're going to look internally to see how is everything connected. So I used my friend ChatGPT to come up with the systems design thinking for a printer manufacturing's value chain. So I know it's really hard to see this, but what I want to draw your attention to is these colored boxes are the ones where there is more than one interconnection. So those are the more important nodes. You've got some areas that really just look at product lifecycle like design and governance. You've got operations and supply on here, and you've got end use and end of life up here. On the left, in that green box, that's your climate risk. The blue box in there is climate risk, and the bottom one is social impacts. I wanted to include social impacts on this because climate does impact social. And so if you have climate that's impacting employees getting to work, then you've got a disrupted supply chain. That's one of the ways to disrupt the supply chain. So I wanted to include that. And we can see that those are the biggest boxes out there, and they're connected to nearly every single element of this company's chain. So when we look at this, the other thing to draw from this image is when you're looking at how is everything impacted, you say, okay, what business functions are needed to drive these specific elements? And so take that with you when we come to our next slide, which is developing a robust governance structure. So a governance structure defines how decisions are made, how power is exercised, and how stakeholders are managed. So you got to make sure you've got board oversight, like they are reviewing the stuff. If you can get in front of your board, you have to get in front of your board at least once a year, if not 2, 3, 4 times a year. Every single meeting would be great. Then you want executive level buy-in. You absolutely need this, and that's where you want to go back to your interdependency or your systems thinking map to say who is involved, which programs, which functional units are key to this process, and that is and which ones are impacted by climate risk. Typically, it is the finance, it's legal, it's your chief human resource officer, it's your marketing, it's your R&D people or person, it's your head of operations, head of technology or product, your investor or your public relations person. You want these people on this team. And accountability is crucial. So when you have this and we build this executive committee around sustainability, write a charter that everybody has signed and adopted. This charter is going to define who is involved, why they're involved, and what they're responsible for doing. This is how you integrate sustainability in your company. So you'll have someone like me who's kind of leading the show, but I can't do this by myself. I need to have my executive team bought in and committed and accountable for this work. I need my board oversight to say, yep, we're steering the ship in the right direction. And then underneath that, I have working groups around the company to kind of really infiltrate these topics throughout the company. This graphic on the right, you could just do, there's so many different ways to demonstrate what a governance structure should look like. Everybody's sustainability report typically has a governance structure. I just chose this one because I like the colors and I liked how this showed like arrows back and forth that every level is talking to the other. So we're constantly getting feedback from each other because that is critical as well. So yeah, finally, with a strong governance structure, it means that you can more easily drive your sustainability program strategy into your business and create that long-term value creation. So what's material to your business? What's important? What are those issues that are important to your business? So when you're going to develop a materiality assessment, you have two approaches you can take. You can take a singular, or just looking at how these environmental, social, or governance issues could impact your financial disclosures in the short term. Or you can look at double materiality, which looks at not just impact on financial, but how that company also impacts health and well-being and the environment in the long term. Because in the long term, that's eventually going to come back and hit your financials anyways. So this chart here is another one I pulled off the web. These are the materiality graphs are available in just about everybody's sustainability report. They're done in a million different ways, just like the governance structure. But I like this one because it's easy to read, right? You can see what's low importance, what's medium importance, and what's high importance. This is your strategic blueprint to guide resource allocation, improve long-term financial performance, and strengthen stakeholder trust. I'm going to pause there and re-emphasize the stakeholder trust. In order to get stakeholder trust and build this, you actually have to invite all of your key stakeholders into the process of defining these material issues. So you want your executive team committee to help define those internal and external stakeholders. Get a third party, an independent third party to come in and do this. You could do it yourself. You could do it with a web app. If you have an independent third party come in, they are unbiased. They're going to take the standards, whether it's GRI or SASB or the EU CSRD standard, and they're going to use that as the foundation for building out your materiality study. And they're going to engage those stakeholders and really tease out what are these important issues. One thing to note is that you can see on this one, this Telefonica, they've got a lot of issues in the green. That's a lot of things to pay attention to. That might very well be for them that they should be paying attention to all of them. But there's going to be some industries that might only see 2 or 3 issues in that green. That's fine too. You do not want to add more issues to those critical material issues category if they're not important, because they're going to lose trust doing that. I remember way back in the day, we're like, oh, let's keep throwing it up there because it looks good because we're going to look at a lot. But at the end of the day, companies are looking at that, or stakeholders are looking at that, and if it doesn't align with business value, then it has no place being on that chart. So, okay, next one is once you identify these measures and you've got your steering committee up there, you've identified your what material topics are, now you want to start measuring and reporting it. And again, this is demonstrated in a linear fashion, but it really is circular as well. So the first thing you do, regardless of what topic we're talking about, is establish program governance. That we're going back to the governance again. Who's responsible? What are the roles and responsibilities? How is the data going to flow? Draft an inventory management plan describing all of these things. Follow international standards if they exist for that topic. Align these reporting measures with your internal controls. That really ensures consistency and accuracy, and again, boosts that external stakeholder trust. And then report on it annually. Let people know what you're doing. Let people know how you're doing it. And again, this is cyclical. Every year you're going to get smarter. Every year you might have to change how you're going to do this because you're more aware. You actually found the person who's really knowledgeable on this topic. They might not have been involved last year, but you have them in there this year, and you're restating your reporting, and that's fine, and it's great because this, sustainability is evolving. Every year we learn and we get better. But the most important thing you can do is your climate risk assessment. We've talked an awful lot about this, what it is, the value it brings. At the end of the day, a climate risk assessment is one of the most strategic tools a sustainability professional can use. It helps organizations understand climate change, both physical impacts like extreme weather, and there's transition pressures that like new policies, and how these things can affect your operations, your supply chain, your workforce, your long-term competitiveness. What makes it powerful is that it translates climate science into business language. It talks about financial exposure, operational vulnerability, and strategic opportunity. For companies, this work strengthens resiliency. It prepares them for evolving disclosure standards and highlights where innovation and low carbon solutions can create value. For you, for anybody working in this field, it's a core skill set to learn how to do this, to bridging analytics, strategy, and sustainability to drive informed, future-ready decisions. So, final thoughts is, global standards are great. They're providing stability in this changing regulatory landscape, so lean into them. Because legal mandates are largely diminished or gone. Some of them still exist in other countries, but certainly not to the scale that we expected to see them in early 2025 and in 2024. Banks still expect them, investors still expect them, and business partners still expect companies to pay attention to this and report on this. Organizations are not exempt from social and environmental risks. And in the end, we report this data for the same reason we report financial data, because it provides decision usefulness. And with that, I will open it up to questions. I do have, I actually hyperlinked everything in here for sources, so I'm happy to share this slide deck afterwards, and you can circulate it as needed. There's nothing sensitive on here, so it's all